My son tried to declare me insane, but he forgot I owned the law firm. I was folding laundry when the call came. Not my son's call, not my daughter-in-law's. It was a woman from the county clerk's office, someone I had known for 20 years, someone who had watched my children grow up at the July parades. Her voice was strange that morning, tight, like she was swallowing glass. She said, "Ellen, I need you to come down here." I said, "Why?" She said, "Just come." So I put the laundry down, a blue towel half folded. I remember the towel because it was the one my husband used to take to the beach, the one with the faded anchor in the corner. I left it there on the couch, and I drove to the courthouse in my old Honda. The air conditioner was broken again. It was August. The heat came through the windows like a bad memory. My name is Ellen. I am 69 years old. I have 2 children, a daughter named Claire who lives 3 states away and calls me once a month if I am lucky, and a son named Matthew. Matthew is the one who stayed. Matthew is the one I helped buy his first house. Matthew is the one whose children I raised while he and his wife built their careers. Matthew is the one who looked me in the eye 3 weeks ago and said, "Mom, I think you need help." He said it softly, like he cared, like he was worried. He said the stress of losing Dad was making me confused. He said I was forgetting things. He said I had become a danger to myself. I had just made him a pot roast.
The pot roast was good. I remember that too. I had used the recipe my mother gave me, the one written on a yellow index card in her shaky handwriting. I had spent 5 hours on that roast. I had pulled the slow cooker out of the cabinet where it had sat unused since my husband died. I had gone to the grocery store at 7 in the morning to get the right cut of beef. The butcher asked how I was doing. I said fine. That was a lie, but fine is what you say when you are 69 and you do not want to explain the shape of your loneliness to a man in a white apron. I took the roast to Matthew's house. I carried it in a glass dish with a lid. His wife, Sarah, opened the door. She smiled. That smile. I know that smile now. It is the smile people give you when they have already decided what to do with you. Matthew was on the couch. His phone was in his hand. He put it down when I walked in. He kissed my cheek. He said, "Mom, you didn't have to do this." I said, "I wanted to." I set the roast on the counter. Sarah said, "Let me get you some water." She opened the cabinet and took out a glass. Not my glass. They had glasses for me. A special glass. A glass they kept on the top shelf where I could not reach. I had noticed that months ago, but I told myself I was imagining things. Mothers imagine things. We spend so many years convincing ourselves that the little cruelties are accidents. Dinner was fine. The kids ate. My grandchildren, Leo and Mia. Leo is 11, Mia is 8. They are the reason I stayed in this town after my husband died. They are the reason I gave up the condo in Florida. I was going to move there. I was going to sit by the pool and read mystery novels and let the sun bake the grief out of my bones. But Matthew said, "Mom, stay." He said the kids need you. He said we need you. So I stayed. I sold the condo. I used the money to help them renovate their kitchen. I wrote the check with a smile. That was 3 years ago. 3 years of driving Leo to soccer practice. 3 years of picking Mia up from school when Sarah had meetings. 3 years of being the backup, the safety net, the grandmother who always said yes. After dinner, I did the dishes. That was my job. I washed the plates. I scrubbed the roasting pan. I dried the glasses and put them away. I put my special glass back on the top shelf, where I could not reach. Then I sat on the couch and watched the kids play a video game. Leo was beating Mia. Mia was pretending to be angry, but she was laughing. I looked at Matthew. He was looking at Sarah. They were not looking at me. They were having one of those silent conversations, the kind married people have when they are building a case against someone. That was 3 weeks ago. Now I was driving to the courthouse with the air conditioner broken and a knot in my stomach the size of a fist. The woman at the clerk's office did not tell me what was happening, but I am not stupid. I may be 69, but I am not stupid.
I built a business from nothing. I started a law firm when women did not start law firms. I worked 16-hour days while Matthew and Claire were in daycare. I paid for college. I paid for weddings. I paid for down payments. I am not a woman who forgets things. I am a woman who remembers everything. Every slight, every kindness, every time someone looked at me like I was already gone. I parked the car. I walked into the courthouse. The air conditioning hit me like a cold hand. I went to the clerk's window. The woman was there. Her name is Denise. She has known me since I was 45 and fighting a zoning case in this very building. She looked at me like she wanted to cry. She handed me a folder. She said, "Ellen, I am so sorry." I opened the folder. It was a petition for guardianship. Matthew had filed it 2 days ago. He was asking the court to declare me incapacitated. He was asking to be named my guardian. He was saying I could not manage my own finances. He was saying I was a danger to myself. He had attached a letter from a doctor I had never met, a doctor who said I showed signs of dementia, a doctor who had never examined me, a doctor whose name I did not recognize. Matthew had also attached a statement from Sarah. She said she had witnessed me wandering the neighborhood at night. She said I had left the stove on twice. She said I had called Leo by the wrong name. Leo, my grandson. I have never called him the wrong name. Not once. Not ever.
I read the whole thing standing there at the counter. My hands did not shake. That surprised me. I thought they would shake, but they were steady. They were the same hands that had signed 1,000 legal documents, the same hands that had argued in front of judges and juries and arbitration panels, the same hands that had rocked Matthew to sleep when he had a fever at 2 a.m. I closed the folder. I looked at Denise. I said, "When is the hearing?" She said, "Friday." That is 3 days away. I walked out of the courthouse. I got back in my car. I did not cry. I sat there in the heat and I thought about the pot roast. I thought about the 5 hours I spent making it. I thought about the butcher asking how I was doing. I thought about the smile Sarah gave me when she opened the door. I thought about Matthew's phone in his hand. He had been texting someone. He had put the phone down when I walked in. I had not thought about that before, but now I thought about it. Now it was the only thing I could think about. I drove home. The house was quiet. My husband's chair was empty. It had been empty for 4 years. He died of a heart attack in that chair. I found him. I called 911. I did CPR until the paramedics came. He was gone. The house felt wrong after that. Too big, too full of silence. But I stayed because Matthew asked me to stay. I stayed because the kids needed me. I stayed because I thought that was what mothers do. We stay. We give. We empty ourselves until there is nothing left, and then we are told we are crazy. I went into the bedroom. I opened my closet. In the back, there was a shoebox. The shoebox had my will. It had the deed to the house. It had the paperwork for the law firm. I had sold the firm 5 years ago, but I had kept a small stake, a consulting arrangement, enough money to live on, enough money to help my children when they needed it. I had given Matthew and Sarah $30,000 for the kitchen. I had given Claire $15,000 for a new car when hers died. I had never asked for anything back. I had never kept score. That was my mistake. I should have kept score. I pulled out the paperwork. I read every page. I had named Matthew as my power of attorney. I had named him as my healthcare proxy. I had trusted him. I had signed those documents 3 years ago after my husband died. I had been sitting at my kitchen table. Matthew had brought the papers. He said it was just in case. He said it was just to be safe. He said, "You never know, Mom." I signed them without reading them. I had been a lawyer for 40 years, and I signed documents without reading them because my son handed me a pen and said, "Trust me." That is the thing about betrayal. It does not come from enemies. It comes from the people you hand your pen to. Friday came faster than I wanted. I did not hire a lawyer. I did not need one. I was the lawyer. I put on a black dress, the same dress I wore to my husband's funeral. It felt right, like armor. I drove to the courthouse. I walked into the courtroom. Matthew and Sarah were already there. They were sitting at a table with a lawyer, a man in a blue suit, a man I had never seen before. Matthew looked at me when I walked in. His face did not change. He looked at me like I was a stranger, like I was a problem he needed to solve. Sarah would not look at me at all. She stared at the table. Her hands were folded. She was wearing a ring I had given her for her 10th wedding anniversary, a diamond band. I had sold some of my mother's jewelry to buy that ring. I sat at the other table, alone. The judge came in, a woman, younger than me, 40s maybe.
She looked tired. She looked like she had already seen too many families tear each other apart. She called the case. Matthew's lawyer stood up. He said, "Your Honor, we have reason to believe that Ellen Marshall is suffering from early-stage dementia." He said she has been exhibiting concerning behaviors. He said her son and daughter-in-law are deeply worried about her safety. He said they are asking for temporary guardianship pending a full medical evaluation. I stood up. The judge looked at me. She said, "Mrs. Marshall, are you represented by counsel?" I said, "I represent myself, Your Honor." She raised her eyebrows. I said, "I practiced law in this county for 37 years. I founded Marshall and Associates. I tried over 200 cases in this building. I know every judge. I know every clerk. I know every bailiff. I know the rules of evidence better than the man sitting across from me, and I am not suffering from dementia." Matthew's lawyer tried to speak. I held up my hand. I said, "Your Honor, may I approach?" The judge said, "You may." I walked to the bench. I opened my folder. I pulled out the letter from the doctor Matthew had used. I said, "This doctor has never examined me. He has never spoken to me. He wrote this letter based solely on statements from my son and daughter-in-law. That is not a medical opinion. That is hearsay. That is malpractice." I then pulled out a statement from my own doctor, a doctor I had seen the day before, a doctor who had examined me for 2 hours and administered a cognitive test, a doctor who had written a letter saying I was of sound mind. I handed it to the judge. The courtroom was silent. I looked at Matthew. His face had changed. He looked scared. He should have been scared. I pulled out another document. I said, "Your Honor, I would also like to submit evidence of a financial transaction that occurred 6 days before my son filed this petition." I handed the judge a bank statement. On that statement was a transfer of $50,000 from Matthew and Sarah's joint account to a separate account in Sarah's name only. I said, "My daughter-in-law moved that money the same day my son started telling people I had dementia. I believe they were preparing for a legal fight they knew was coming. I believe they planned this weeks in advance."
Sarah made a sound, a small sound, like a mouse being stepped on. Matthew put his hand on her arm. The judge looked at them. Then she looked at me. She said, "Mrs. Marshall, do you have any other evidence?" I said, "Yes, Your Honor." I pulled out a copy of my husband's will. He had left everything to me. But there was a clause I had forgotten about until I went through the shoebox. The clause said that if I became incapacitated, Matthew would become the trustee of the entire estate. Not just my money, but my husband's retirement accounts, the life insurance, the vacation property in Vermont, all of it. I said, "Your Honor, my husband and I built everything we have together. We built it with our hands. We built it with years of work and sacrifice. And now my son is trying to take it from me by telling the court I am crazy. He is not worried about my safety. He is worried about my money. He and his wife have already spent thousands of dollars renovating a kitchen I paid for. They have used me as a free babysitter for 3 years, and now they want the rest." The judge looked at Matthew. She said, "Is this true?" Matthew's lawyer stood up. He said, "Your Honor, these allegations are completely unfounded. My client is simply concerned about his mother's well-being. He has no interest in her finances." I laughed. I did not mean to laugh. It just came out. It was a dry sound, a hollow sound. The sound a woman makes when she finally understands that the people she loved never loved her back.
"Your Honor, may I ask my son a question?" The judge said, "You may." I turned to Matthew. I looked him in the eye. I said, "When was the last time you asked me how I was doing? Not about the kids, not about dinner, not about watching the house while you went on vacation. When was the last time you asked me if I was okay?" Matthew did not answer. He could not answer, because the answer was never. He had never asked. Not once in 4 years. Not since his father died. He had called me when he needed something. He had come over when he needed a babysitter. He had texted when he needed money for Leo's school trip or Mia's dance recital. But he had never once asked how I was. He had never once sat on my couch and said, "Mom, tell me about your day." He had never once noticed that I ate dinner alone every night, that I talked to the television because there was no one else to talk to, that I had stopped buying fresh vegetables because they went bad before I could finish them. The judge denied the guardianship petition. She denied it immediately. She said there was no evidence of incapacity. She said the petition appeared to be filed in bad faith. She ordered Matthew and Sarah to pay my legal fees. Not that I had any, I was representing myself, but she ordered them to pay something. A symbolic amount, $1,000. She looked at Matthew and said, "You should be ashamed of yourself." Then she looked at me and said, "I am sorry, Mrs. Marshall."
I walked out of the courtroom.
My legs were shaking now. The adrenaline was gone. The fight was over. I sat on a bench in the hallway, the same hallway where I had waited for jury verdicts 30 years ago, the same hallway where I had celebrated wins and mourned losses. I sat there, and I waited for Matthew to come out. He did. He walked out with Sarah. His lawyer was already gone. Matthew saw me. He stopped. Sarah tugged his arm. She wanted to leave. She wanted to run. But Matthew walked over to me. He stood there. He looked down at me. His face was hard. Not sorry, not ashamed. Hard. He said, "You ruined everything." I said, "I ruined everything? I raised you. I paid for your school. I bought your first house. I watched your children for free for 3 years, and you tried to put me in a guardianship? You tried to take my home? You tried to steal your father's money? And I ruined everything?" He said, "You were supposed to die, not him. You." I have heard a lot of things in my life. I have heard confessions from criminals. I have heard lies from witnesses. I have heard juries say guilty and not guilty. I have heard my husband say "I love you" on the day he died. But I had never heard anything like that. My son stood in front of me in a courthouse hallway and told me I was supposed to be dead instead of his father. He said it like it was a fact, like it was weather, like it was something that could not be changed. Sarah pulled him away. They walked down the hallway and through the double doors. I watched them go. I watched my son disappear. The same son I had held in my arms when he was born. The same son who had taken his first steps in our living room. The same son who had cried when I dropped him off at kindergarten. The same son who had called me from college just to say he missed my cooking. Denise from the clerk's office came out. She sat next to me. She put her hand on mine. She did not say anything. She just sat there. That was the kindest thing anyone had done for me in years. Just sitting. Just being there. Not asking for anything. Not needing anything. Just sitting in the silence with me. I went home. The house was still quiet. The blue towel was still on the couch, half folded. I finished folding it. I put it in the linen closet. I went into the kitchen. I opened the refrigerator. There was leftover pot roast in there, from 3 weeks ago. I had not been able to throw it away. I took it out. I looked at it. The meat was gray now. The vegetables were soft. I threw it in the trash. I washed the glass dish. I put it back in the cabinet. Then I sat in my husband's chair, the chair where he died. I sat there and I cried. Not because of the guardianship, not because of the court case, not because of the $50,000 or the kitchen renovation, or the years of being used. I cried because my son hated me. I cried because he had wanted me to die.
I cried because somewhere along the way, I had raised a man who looked at his mother and saw nothing but a wallet with a pulse. That was 3 months ago. I have not seen Matthew since the courthouse. I have not seen Leo or Mia. Sarah blocked my number. Matthew changed his. I called Claire. I told her everything. She listened. She said she was not surprised. She said she had seen the way Matthew treated me for years. She said she had tried to tell me, but I would not listen. She was right. I did not listen. I did not want to listen. I wanted to believe my son loved me. I wanted to believe all the years of sacrifice meant something. They did not. They meant nothing. They meant I was a fool. Claire came to visit last month. She drove 8 hours with her husband and her 2 kids. She stayed for a week. She cleaned my house. She cooked for me. She sat with me in the evenings and watched the television shows I liked. She did not ask for anything. She did not mention money. She did not talk about Matthew. She just loved me. That is the difference. You do not have to beg for love from the people who actually love you. It just shows up. It brings groceries. It washes your dishes. It sits on the couch and laughs at the same stupid jokes you laugh at.
I am still in the house. I am not leaving. It is my house. My name is on the deed. My money paid for it. My husband and I picked out the paint colors together. We chose the hardwood floors. We planted the oak tree in the backyard.
That tree is 50 years old now. It is taller than the house. The leaves fall on the lawn every autumn, and I rake them myself. I am not crazy. I am not demented. I am an old woman who was betrayed by her son. There is a difference. I still drive Leo and Mia's school. Sometimes, when I am on that road, I do not stop. I do not look for them in the playground. I do not call out their names. They are not my grandchildren anymore. That is what happens when a son tries to destroy his mother. He takes everything, even the children, even the memories, even the sound of their voices saying grandma. He takes it all because he believes it belongs to him. It does not belong to him. It never did. But he took it anyway. The other day, I was at the grocery store, the same one where the butcher asked how I was doing. I saw Sarah. She was pushing a cart. Leo was with her. Leo saw me. He looked at me for a long moment. His eyes were confused. He started to say something. Sarah grabbed his arm and pulled him down another aisle. She did not look at me. She did not acknowledge me. She just disappeared behind a display of cereal boxes. I stood there for a minute. Then I bought my groceries. I went home. I put the bags on the counter. I put the milk in the refrigerator. I put the bread in the bread box. And then I stood in my kitchen and I wondered how a life could end up like this. Not the ending of a life, but the ending of a family. The slow, quiet vanishing of everyone you loved.
My phone rang last night. It was late, almost midnight. I answered. It was Matthew. He was drunk. I could hear it in his voice. He said, "Mom," just Mom. Then he was quiet for a long time. I did not say anything. I waited. He said Sarah left him. She took the kids. She took the money. The $50,000. She took it. And she left. He said he did not know where she went. He said he came home from work and the house was empty. The kids' rooms were empty. The closets were empty. Even the ring I gave her was on the kitchen counter. The diamond band. She left it there, like a question mark. Matthew started to cry. He cried like a child. He said, "Mom, I am sorry. I am so sorry. I did not know what to do. She told me to file the petition. She said it was the only way. She said you were getting older and we needed to protect ourselves. She said you would never know. She said you would forget." He said, "I believed her. I believed her because I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that you were the problem, that you were the one who was broken. Because if you were broken, then what I was doing was not wrong. It was just necessary." I listened to my son cry. I listened to him confess. And I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not relief, nothing. The love was gone. The betrayal had burned it out. There was just silence where the love used to be. I said, "Matthew, you tried to destroy me. You tried to put me in a home. You tried to take everything your father and I built. You wished I was dead. You said it to my face in a courthouse. And now you are crying because your wife left you, because she used you the way you used me. That is not my problem. That is your life. You made it. Now you have to live in it." He said, "Mom, please." I said, "Goodbye, Matthew." I hung up the phone. I sat in the dark. The house was quiet, the same quiet, but it did not feel empty anymore. It felt like mine. It felt like the only place in the world where I was not a target, where I was not a wallet, where I was not a babysitter or a nurse or a problem to be solved. I was just a woman in her own house, an old woman with a blue towel and a broken air conditioner, and a son who tried to declare her insane. He forgot I owned the law firm. He forgot I spent 37 years watching people lie. He forgot I built my life on the bones of men who underestimated me. He forgot I was his mother before he was anything. And a mother remembers everything, even the things her son wishes she would forget, especially those things she keeps in a shoebox in the back of her closet, right next to the will, right next to the deed,
right next to the paperwork that proves she was never the crazy one. She was just the one who loved too much. And that is not a sickness. That is the only thing she ever did wrong.